California is well developed economically, with two major economic regions, the San Francisco Bay Area and the Greater Los Angeles area. There is a city called South Lake Tahoe, located 250 kilometers from San Francisco. As the name suggests, this city is located at the south of Lake Tahoe. According to the 2010 U.S. Census, the city only has a population of 21,403. The surrounding communities were once known for their high level of safety, and today's story takes place here. J.C. Dugard is a bright and pretty young girl. Even though she lived a reconstituted family, her life was happy. Her mother and stepfather both loved her very much. Initially living in Arcadia, a town near Los Angeles, her parents relocated the family to a small town called Myers near South Lake Tahoe in California in order to find a safer community for their child. June 10, 1991, a day that is unforgettable for the just 11-year-old little J.C. Early in the morning, J.C.'s mother, Terry Probin, went to work. Wearing her favorite pink outfit, J.C. headed alone to the usual spot where the school bus stops. On the way, a grey car drove straight towards her and rolled down the window. J.C. thought they were asking for directions, so approached the car, but instead of a question, she got hit by a stun gun. After she fainted, a woman quickly lifted her into the car. J.C.'s home was not far away, and her stepfather, Carl Probin, happened to witness the scene of their daughter being dragged into the car. He immediately rode his bike to chase after, but chasing a car on a bicycle was not going to work. Not only did he fail to catch up, he didn't even see the license plate clearly, only knowing that there were two people in the car, one of whom was female. In addition, several of J.C.'s classmates also witnessed the kidnapping from a distance. Although they couldn't see the kidnapper clearly, they roughly saw that it was a woman who dragged J.C. into the car. J.C.'s stepfather, Carl, immediately called the police. The response from the U.S. police was very swift on this occasion. Within a few hours, local media repeatedly broadcasted the news of J.C.'s kidnapping and called on the public to be vigilant. They hoped to rescue J.C. with the collective effort of the public as soon as possible, because the longer the kidnapping dragged on, the greater the danger to her life. The police deployed a large number of officers to search for the helicopter. Police dogs were also sent out, and many volunteers joined the search team. Unfortunately, no clues related to J.C. were found. Based on descriptions from J.C.'s classmates and stepfather, the police sketched a portrait of a female suspect. However, due to the long distance, the accuracy of the portrait couldn't be guaranteed. Both tracking the kidnapper and conducting a thorough search yielded no results. J.C.'s mother, deeply grieving, mobilized local caring individuals to continue the search for her daughter. The town and its surroundings were filled with missing posters of J.C. Pink ribbons covered the town, as pink was J.C.'s favorite color. Despite efforts from the community, weeks passed with no news of her. To expand the search efforts, J.C.'s mother established a group called J.C.'s Hope, coordinating volunteers and fundraising activities. Soon, items such as T-shirts, jackets, posters, missing person notices with J.C.'s image were widely circulated. There was even a song dedicated to J.C. from a singer. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children also got involved, offering substantial rewards and encouraging the public to provide clues. The case of J.C.'s abduction gained nationwide attention, sparking discussions across the country and even making to the popular TV show America's Most Wanted. Despite extensive efforts, J.C. could not be found, leading the authorities to consider if the culprit was someone known to her. First to be suspected was J.C.'s stepfather, Carl, because Carl was the most direct witness. He claimed that a woman dragged J.C. into a grey car. If he committed the crime himself, then it makes sense why the police couldn't find anything, as he provided false information. Moreover, JC seemed not to like Carl very much. Given these analyses, Carl did indeed seem suspicious. Faced with the police's suspicions, Carl felt like he couldn't do anything. He underwent a lie detector test at the police station, passing it smoothly. Since no other substantial evidence was found, he was eventually released. The second suspect was believed to be JC's biological father, Ken Slayton. Perhaps wanting his daughter to live with him, he resorted to unconventional kidnapping to achieve that. However, upon investigation, it was revealed that Ken had no idea that he even had a daughter. It turned out he had a previous relationship with JC's mother, Terry. When they broke up, Terry never informed him that she was pregnant. With no suspects or clues on JC's whereabouts, the case reached a standstill. As time passed, the case lost momentum, and people speculated that JC might have already passed away, possibly abandoned in the wilderness. Despite these thoughts, Terry never gave up. She firmly believed her daughter was alive, waiting to be rescued. The missing person notices about JC have been distributed to over 1 million copies. Over time, people have even used computers to simulate what she would look like as she grows up. However, JC seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth with no trace at all. So, where could she be? In fact, JC's mother, Terry, is right in her feeling that JC is still alive. Going back to the day of the incident, JC regained consciousness a few times after being dragged into the car. She faintly overheard a conversation between a man and a woman. "Oh my, we actually did it and managed to escape. It's unbelievable." When she fully woke up, she found herself 180 kilometers away from home in Antioch, and the world had completely changed. Little JC was imprisoned in a messy and run-down backyard. The backyard of this house was quite spacious, surrounded by a wooden fence, covered with plastic sheets inside, filled with lots of old objects and trash. It was obviously an abandoned backyard that no one paid attention to. JC was struggling to survive in this dirty and messy environment. The kidnappers were a crazy couple, the man named Philip Garrido and the woman named Nancy Garrido. Philip is a habitual offender, a registered sex offender, with many previous convictions. He was born in California in 1951, and after dropping out of high school at the age of 21, he used drugs to violate a 14-year-old girl. Although he was caught, the girl's family did not allow her daughter to testify, which allowed Philip to escape prosecution. Philip then had a short-lived marriage where his wife accused him of domestic violence and sought a divorce. At that point, Philip tried to kidnap his wife, and eventually, with the help of the law, the two successfully divorced. In 1976, 25-year-old Philip kidnapped a 25-year-old woman, Catherine Calloway, near South Lake Tahoe, locking her in a warehouse and engaging in sadistic acts for over 5.5 hours. A patrolling police officer noticed a car parked outside the warehouse, found it suspicious, and upon investigating, he caught Philip red-handed. Unable to defend himself against Catherine's testimony, he was ultimately sentenced to 50 years in prison. Interestingly, during his time in prison, Nancy visited the prison to see her uncle. Can you believe what happened next? She actually took a liking to Philip. The two then became a couple. It's hard to understand Nancy's thought process, how she fell in love with a rapist serving a 50-year sentence. What was she thinking? In summary, on October 5, 1981, Nancy and Philip miraculously got married in prison. On August 26, 1988, after spending only 11 years in prison, Philip was allowed to be released on parole due to his outstanding behavior in prison, receiving good evaluations. However, during the parole period, he was under surveillance, even wearing an electronic ankle monitor. The local prosecution department also conducted regular visits to prevent him from engaging in illegal activities again. Despite being monitored, Philip showed no remorse and was set on committing crimes again. As for his wife Nancy, as mentioned earlier, her thought process was different from that of an ordinary person. Faced with her husband's desire to commit crimes again, instead of stopping him, she wanted to be involved. They conspired together, driving around until they encountered JC, who was alone. Without hesitation, they took action and ultimately locked Jace in a soundproof shed in the backyard. This shed was a recording studio built by Philip, so even if JC cried out loud, no one would hear. For the first few days of being tied up, Philip didn't even give her food, leaving JC to fend for herself in the rundown shack. A few days later, Philip, who brought some food, warned JC not to make a sound and not to leave the shack. He lied to JC, saying that her parents no longer wanted her and she was now homeless. Philip also claimed there were dogs guarding outside, ready to tear her apart if she tried to escape. The 11-year-old JC was so frightened that she chose to stay in, although she was actually locked inside and couldn't escape. She had to curl up in the rundown shack, which had no bathroom, using a plastic bucket as her toilet. Philip did not allow her to write or read. Not even her own name was allowed to be mentioned. They gave JC a fake name, Alyssa, and the only person JC could see was the person who kidnapped her, Philip. Later, Philip brought in a television, but only allow her to watch the shopping channel because he was afraid that JC would see news about the search for her. A month and a half later, JC was moved to a larger room next door, which had a relatively comfortable bed. 7 months later, JC finally met the second person, which was Nancy. Nancy pretentiously brought along a stuffed toy, chocolates and milk, and apologized to JC. In reality, they were trying to play good cop, bad cop to better control her, who continued to live bravely in such an environment. After almost 3 years, she was finally allowed some time without being chained. On April 3, 1994, Philip suddenly brought some hot-cooked food to JC, marking the first time since her captivity that she had freshly cooked food other than junk food. So did Philip have a change of heart? Obviously, it wasn't just because it was Easter, but there was another reason. JC was pregnant, and at 13 years old, Philip wasn't about to take her to the hospital. Instead, he let her watch news about pregnancy and childbirth, asking her to learn those skills on her own. On August 18, 1994, JC gave birth to a daughter, and finally, a smile returned to her face as she now had a companion. She took good care of her daughter, using the knowledge she had learned from the TV.
She came out, and then I saw her. She was beautiful. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. Had somebody, and I knew I could never let anything happen to her. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I did.
In 1997, JC once again gave birth to her second daughter. For the convenience of having more space for the two children, Philip set up a large tent in the backyard. JC was allowed to leave her room and bring the children to the tent. Although both children were born to JC, Philip insisted that the children call Nancy their mother, while JC's role was only that of their older sister. She felt this was necessary so that the children could deceive the police investigation as they grew up. In reality, during their upbringing, the two children were not discovered by the police, and outsiders believed they were Nancy's children. In the blink of an eye, it was 2009, and it had been 18 years since JC was kidnapped. Throughout the years, JC's mother never gave up searching, and after enduring 18 years of hell, a turning point finally emerged for JC. On August 24, 2009, Philip visited the FBI's San Francisco office and left behind an essay discussing his views on religion and sexuality, primarily stating that he recognized his past mistakes, had healed his tendency to commit crimes, and could help others heal similar illnesses. And he was not done at that point. He continued by bringing 2 daughters to the University of California, Berkeley, intending to apply to hold a lecture on religion at the school. The police department of the school happened to be involved in this process. Department head Lisa Campbell, while interacting with Philip, found him to be suspicious. She noticed a strange relationship between Philip and the 2 daughters he brought along. The girls exhibited a sense of fear towards Philip and seemed constantly unhappy, very restrained and resigned. They showed extreme obedience towards Philip. Lisa felt that something was off, and, being cautious, she remained composed, had Philip register his name, and asked him to come back the next day. In secret, she had an officer start investigating Philip. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Philip had a criminal record and was a registered sex offender and was still on parole. Lisa contacted Philip's parole officer to inquire about the situation. When the officer heard that there were 2 underage girls with Philip, he was alarmed. Considering Philip's past offenses, he was prohibited from associating with minors. Therefore, the parole department immediately sent someone to Philip's house to investigate his relationship with the 2 girls. However, only his wife Nancy and elderly mother were found at home, not the 2 girls. Philip explained that the girls were relatives, and he had permission from their parents to take them for a visit to the campus. The investigators were cautious and asked Philip to bring the 2 girls and their parents to the parole department the next day for registration. On August 26th, the cocky Philip brought Nancy, JC, and her 2 daughters to the parole department. Pointing at JC, Philip said she was his relative Alyssa, and the 2 girls were her daughters. JC admitted to being Alyssa, and the 2 girls were her daughters. She even mentioned that Philip was a good person and treated her and the children well. The 2 daughters timely agreed, saying that Philip was very nice to them and their mother. On the surface, Philip seemed to have truly reformed, and everything seemed to be as he had said, and everything was all well and good. However, in reality, this whole story was carefully planned out by him the night before, and he thought he had escaped unscathed. Cunning Philip faced a problem when investigators needed to verify JC's identity. An issue arose because Alyssa was simply a fabricated identity. In order to uncover the truth, investigators interviewed JC and the 2 children separately. They also called the police. Finally, in front of the police, JC mustered up the courage and revealed her real name, JC. This is the very same JC who was kidnapped 18 years ago, and the kidnapper is none other than Philip. For all these years, she has been under Philip's control, living in a secluded backyard, unable to escape. The officers were shocked to hear this and immediately arrested Philip and his wife, Nancy. When JC's mother, Terry, received the call from the police, she could hardly believe it. After 18 years, she never gave up and finally heard her daughter's voice again. JC couldn't stop crying while in her mother's arms, unable to stop for a long time. For more than 10 years, JC has been afraid of forgetting what her mother looks like, so he has been recalling her appearance in her mind over the years. It is comforting to know that JC and her 2 daughters are still in relatively good health. Upon JC's return, her stepfather was particularly pleased. Despite the police eliminating his suspicion through lie detector tests and investigations, many people still doubted him over the years, making it very draining for him. The police quickly arrived at the place where JC was held, which was only a little over a 2-hour drive from JC's home, but no one had searched this place for 18 years. Upon entering the backyard of the house, the scene before their eyes was unbelievable. The conditions were appalling. The The entire backyard had 2 sheds with 2 tents set up and a lot of garbage piled up. There was a grey car parked in the yard, the same one used during the kidnapping. JC's living quarters were extremely basic and messy, making it hard to imagine that she had spent 18 years in such an environment, taking care of 2 daughters all by herself. The mastermind behind all this was Philip and his wife Nancy. Philip and Nancy were quickly accused of 29 serious crimes, including kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment. Initially, Philip did not admit guilt, but faced with overwhelming evidence, he eventually confessed. On June 2, 2011, in accordance with state law, Philip was sentenced to 431 years to life imprisonment, while his wife Nancy was sentenced to 36 years to life imprisonment. The case did not end there. Because indirectly causing this tragedy, many people need to know that the kidnapper of JC Philip was a registered criminal. Although on parole, he was still under the supervision of the state government. Parole officers would visit periodically, and according to official records, investigators had entered Philip's home 60 times after JC was kidnapped, yet none of those 60 visits discovered JC in the backyard, which seems quite absurd. In addition, the police did not even consider Philip a suspect. Philip's house was just over a 2-hour drive from JC's house, and in 1976, Philip kidnapped a girl near South Tahoe Lake, where JC lived. With so many coincidental clues, the police ignored them all. There were even more absurd actions that caused the police to miss the opportunity to rescue JC. In 2002, the fire department received a report that a child from Philip's house was injured while swimming. Technically, Philip did not have any children, but the fire department did not report this to the parole department, nor did they investigate who the child was. In 2006, Philip's neighbor called to report that there was a child living in Philip's backyard. An officer talked to Philip for 30 minutes but did not check the backyard. It is no exaggeration to say that it was the irresponsible and negligent behavior of the police and government agencies that kept JC in hell for 18 years. In July 2010, the California government decided to compensate JC with $20 million to compensate for her years of imprisonment, sexual abuse, and mental and physical torment caused by the government's negligence. The local sheriff's office publicly issued a statement expressing apologies to JC. JC's family sued the U.S. government, stating that Philip had violated the terms of his parole by drinking alcohol and using illicit substances, actions that should have led to his parole being revoked and him returning to prison. If the government had strictly enforced this, JC would not have been kidnapped. It was the government's negligence that led to this tragedy, but the lawsuit was dismissed by the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. In 2010, JC established the JAYC Foundation to provide services for families who have experienced severe trauma like hers. In July 2011, based on her personal experience, JC published a heartbreaking memoir called A Stolen Life. The book narrates her long captivity at the hands of Philip after being kidnapped and the various efforts she made for survival. Filled with tears, anger, courage, and longing, this book is poignant and moving. 18 years of imprisonment. What does it mean for a girl just 11 years old? Prolonged control and brainwashing have led to trust issues and made it difficult for her to come out of her shell. Even though the hope of being rescued seemed slim, she remained strong, never gave up hope, which kept her going through the years. After returning to the family, JC, despite going through a challenging period, quickly emerged from the shadow and happily reunited with the family with the help of loved ones and therapy. She is also dedicated to supporting other women who have been kidnapped and sexually assaulted, helping them regain their confidence. In July 2016, JC published her second book, Freedom, My Book of Firsts. In this book, JC mainly talks about her life after being rescued and how she recovered and reintegrated into the world. She hopes that through this book she can help some survivors who have had similar experiences. Jace writes in the book, "If you don't want life to end, then there is still hope. It all depends on how you perceive it, and to this day, I still believe that each of us holds the key to our own happiness. You must grasp it as much as possible, no matter what form it takes." Well, that was JC's story. If you enjoyed watching our videos, you can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos from me. See you in the next episode.